Morning everybody, or afternoon should I say. This is just a few observations. The brief from Jake was kind of very open, which I suppose is in the spirit of digital these days, and it was, what do you think? What are some ideas, what are some things you've come across? So some of these ideas are original, some of them are poached. You would be the judge. I will just crack on through those. So basically, the next slide, we in advertising, and I'm a sort of strategist in advertising, love to put things in boxes because it makes them recognisable. We love things to be neat, we love things to be tidy. When we talk about marketing targets or segments, we have very finely honed descriptions of what they're like. We like to put lines around things, and that's incredibly dangerous with Gen Z, because ultimately it's where around the fringes that the really interesting stuff's happening. It's the one you don't see that gets you. And all you see is the kind of wave after wave after wave of new ideas coming out of nowhere, and it's terrifying people in decision-making positions. And advertising agencies are as guilty as anyone for perpetuating that myth. So over the slide, basically, what I'd like to put forward as my first idea is Vujardé. Now, if I say déjà vu to you, you think, yeah, look, I've heard that before, I know what that means, and you put it in a box and you ignore it because it's boring. Vujardé is the complete opposite of that, and this is the spirit of creativity that works for digital and Gen Z, I suppose. And that is seeing things that you recognise in completely new, refreshing and interesting ways. Darren's discussion this morning about, micro-formatting is a perfect example of that. It's taking pre-existing stuff, playing with it, making it fun, making it interesting again. That's the spirit of creativity. You know, in 05, 06, when YouTube was really just coming through into a mass audience, there was nothing new about video. There was nothing new about user reviews. There was nothing new about home movies. But when you plug those things all together, they suddenly become something really interesting. So that's a great example of Vujardé. And this is a bunch of crazy Dutch guys called Droog Design. I'm not Dutch, but I hope I got it right. And they've put a bunch of sort of shells in a circle, so things do look better in a circle. But what they've done is they've created a revolution in furniture design by repurposing already discovered objects and representing them. And that's a really lovely metaphor of how online creativity works. It's about giving people the tools to get creative themselves and harvesting the results. Okay, next please. This is a fantastic cartoon by a really bitter and twisted Glaswegian cartoonist called David Shrigley, and somehow he's able to peer into the depths of the soul and reveal things about himself that have universal sort of relevance. And the reason I love this, someone looking at a pie graph with a bit missing and it being the bit that they can't look at and it's their life, is because most people don't actually know what they want all the time. We tend to assume perfect knowledge on behalf of consumers when we begin to think about speaking with them, and it's in fact the gaps that are the really interesting bits. It's the bits that they want to discover that are the fascinating parts about them. So how can we actually begin to build ideas that let them fill in those gaps for themselves? We'll use our brains to do that. So the second idea, across the slide, is don't pretend to have all the answers. If you look at the rapid, immense growth in Google, it's because people don't know the answers and they're interested in finding out about them. And Google doesn't pretend to have all the answers, it's just got loads of them in one space. It's for you to choose which one you think is most relevant to you. So what the art of digital and Gen Z creativity is all about is moving from one-liners, which presuppose a pre-formed answer, to a narrative and a story that someone can tell themselves as they explore your brand and they explore your creative representation in your content. And in any kind of good book, it's what remains unsaid, which is the really fascinating thing. It's the bit where people can actually begin to read into you what they want. And if you've created a feedback loop which allows you to harvest that imagination, then you're cooking with gas, because you enter the kind of space that Susan Carlton was discussing example of MySpace before, where you're actually open sourcing stuff, saying this is how it works. Let's actually energize this dynamic. Okay. Over the page, another David Shrigley cartoon. I'm convinced the guy's a genius, but ultimately, we in advertising are way too guilty of assuming we know what people want and then offering it to them, and completely missing the point entirely. Alright, so what this means, over the slide, is a very different way of thinking. And can we move on? Ultimately, Miles Davis is a personal hero of mine, but when you think of the way he made music with Charlie Parker, or how Wynton Marsalis is doing it today, it's very much a real-time, freestyle innovation, exactly what we were talking about with V in terms of constant feedback loops, organic development. It's a bunch of people having fun, feeding off each other as they do it, and creating, in the case of mine, jazz standards. Once you record them, they're frozen. But while they're happening, they're alive and they're mutating, and it's people feeding off one another. And that's the kind of dialogue that people use. So a great sentiment from Miles is don't fear mistakes that aren't, give it a crack, get out there. David again, a Venn diagram. Usually these things are supposed to overlap. And the great terror with digital media was that people would be stuck at home watching their computer screens rather than going out and having beers with one another. You know, we're entering an era of isolation. We're all lost, communities disintegrating. But it's nonsense. You know, what we're actually seeing is completely reverse. People using these technologies to reconnect. So the next idea is that, in fact, community is the content. All human technologies are extensions of the human mind or the human body. You know, that's what they exist for. That's something Margaret Atwood said on the radio, and I thought, God damn, there was something there. But community is what people are looking for. Community is what people are using any technology for. And that's the driving need. Now, we've already had allusions from Jake and also Susan's segmentation of online users to different types of people out there. I've seen it described as the law of 1%, and that came out of YouTube interaction ultimately. You've got 1%, 1% of people create content, 9% of people interact with it, 90% of people actually just go in and look at it, and that's fine because they're the icons, they pay for it. And so what you've got to try and do is always resist the temptation to create behavioural monocultures. Coming back to those segmentations of marketing profiles, eager housewives, or whatever, sort of discerning sort of cheese buyers, or whatever we would like to describe an audience as. Try and resist that. Try and say that I'm going to actually get these people together at a party, and they're going to eat wine and drink cheese and have conversations about stuff they don't really understand about each other.